Okay, so we're going to be making a St. Louis style pizza. So I'm from St. Louis, so this one's definitely near and dear to the heart. Trying to compete with IMOS. I'm doing this a little bit different than a normal IMOS pizza. Plus, I'm trying to do this a little bit less calories than a normal pizza, so I'm going to be using a little bit less cheese. The meat, I would normally use Italian sausage, which it does taste a little bit better, but I'm going to be using ground turkey, just seasoned, of course. So the first thing is going to be making the dough, which is going to be a thin crust dough. And once I make that, it's not really going to rise. I just have to let it sit for at least 30 minutes. So let's make that. So this is going to be making a pretty big batch of dough. This is definitely going to be multiple pizzas. I'm going to do a cup and a half of flour and then 3/4 of a cup of water. Pretty basic when it comes to pizza crust. It's going to be flour, sugar for this one, olive oil, water, salt, and baking powder. You just want the dough to be malleable, so you want to be able to roll it out and it not stick to anything. So I'll cover that when I actually start rolling it out. But if you need to add a little bit more water so it's the right consistency when you're trying to make it in here, you can. So I did a cup and a half of flour. I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Okay. 4 tablespoons of baking powder. I'm sorry, 4 teaspoons. A little bit of salt. Sugar, you can kind of do what you want. 3 tablespoons in the dough, but we're also going to put a little bit of sugar in the sauce. Besides seasoning the ground turkey, most of the seasoning is actually in the sauce. But the sauce is supposed to complement the cheese because the cheese is kind of funky and everything. So the sauce is going to be a little salty and a little sweet. I guess we just put water in here. Remember, a little bit is going to go a long way. So the dough is going to be really thin. So we're going to roll it out like it's pretty big. And this should make 2 good-sized pizzas, but depending on like how well you can roll it out, it can make a third one. But I'm just trying to make 2 pizzas. So, important correction. I only used a half a cup of water. I'm not a chef or anything. I'm just kind of going by how I've made this in the past. I thought for sure a cup and a half of flour was 3/4 of a cup of water, but it's only half a cup because you want it just like this. You want to be able to knead it in your hands without it sticking to your palms. So half a cup of water. Same thing if you use too much olive oil. Like too much olive oil is going to make it just kind of sticky, but this is perfect. We're going to make 2 pretty large pizzas. I got my ninja bandana on. We're getting crazy. So I'm going to cut this into 2 pieces and just cover it with some, not Glad wrap, but what is this called? Saran wrap? Cover it with saran wrap and let that sit for like 30 minutes. You don't have to put it in the fridge. You could just let it sit out. That's what I do, but that works. Another thing when you're making this crust, like little like cracks and stuff, you want to make sure that these are covered. So you just kind of want to like work that in there because you don't want any cracks in the crust. And just kind of do it like this, and it's perfect when you don't have to put any flour on the table when you're just doing this. Now, when I roll it out, I will do flour because I'm going to be putting enough pressure on it. Look at that, cutting on the counter with no cutting board. Okay, so put the Glad wrap on. It just kind of like lets it firm up a little bit. I'll just put it in the microwave. Now we're going to make the sauce, which is my favorite part. For the sauce, you don't want it too runny. So I like a little bit of a thicker sauce. So I use a combination of tomato sauce and tomato paste. So the paste is obviously a lot thicker. But in the sauce is going to be sugar, salt, garlic and herb seasoning, a little bit of oregano, and pepper. So for the sugar, I'll do 2 teaspoons, 3 teaspoons of sea salt, about 1 to 2 teaspoons of oregano, and the pepper, I just kind of put it on like liberally. Same thing with the garlic and herb, I'll do about 2 teaspoons of that. And when you mix everything together, if you want a little bit more of one ingredient, like you want it a little bit saltier, you want it a little bit sweeter, you can just add a little bit of each ingredient. I love tomato sauce. That's the fun thing about cooking. You just try like a little bit as you go. Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm so happy. And especially when you're on a steep deficit, damn, all these muscles, I can barely get the damn pace open. But especially for real, when you are on a deficit, like it's crazy how just like normally if I was eating a bunch of food or I just had a bunch of McDonald's, I wouldn't give a fuck about tasting tomato paste, but it kind of sounds pretty good. So I do the whole thing of paste. Paste is what thickens it up. This is going to be a pretty big batch of sauce. If I was making like more pizzas or something, I would just portion this out and I'd put it back in the fridge. But I'll show you. This is kind of the consistency of sauce that you want. You can use marinara and other stuff like this, but I like to add more ingredients to it. The cheese is funky, but if you have the cheese, it's very hit or miss. Like some people really like it, but it is some funky shit. The provolone by itself is funky, to say the least. If you don't want to use a lot of calories, you can use Splenda for this, which I've done before. But for this, really want to use the real thing. This is going to be good. I can't wait. It's sweet. Damn, that's good. Damn. This is like old school stuff. Another thing, if you're going to put meat on it, Italian sausage, which is what I would normally use for it, is a lot more salty. So I'm going to make the sauce a little bit saltier, but I'm also going to season. I'm going to put a bunch of seasonings on the ground turkey. Now we have the sauce made. So now for toppings, I have the peppers and the onion that I'm going to slice up. But we have the cheeses. The cheeses are the most important part because making a real St. Louis style pizza, it's not it's like you can't buy the cheese from the store unless you're in St. Louis. Like if you're in St. Louis, they actually have an IMOS blended cheese, but really all it is provolone, mozzarella, Swiss, and white cheddar. Where the hell is the other cheese? Provolone, mozzarella, white cheddar, Swiss cheese. Depending on how authentic you want to be about your cheese, you can get different stuff than just this block. I mean, just this block is good. The mozzarella is easy because it's already shredded, but normally provolone, I'll get the legit stuff like some aged provolone or some shit, and it comes in a block. But this, I'm just going to shred all these. So I wasn't necessarily trying to keep the calories super, super low for this, but I'm trying to be calorie conscious with certain ingredients like the Italian sausage and using a little bit less cheese than normal. Remember, this is supposed to make about 2 to 3 pizzas, 2 big ones and 3 decent sized pizzas. So for the meat, I'm doing 150 grams of ground turkey and 100 grams of all the cheese. Have to preheat your oven to 500 degrees. Okay, these are all the toppings. So we get the ground turkey, the onions, the peppers. This is my favorite part. Look at this. I actually don't know. Is my favorite part the sauce or the cheese? But this combination. Oh, so we're gonna start with the dough, or rolling out the dough. Now, I don't have a pizza roller, so I'm gonna use the paper towel holder. If you're gonna do that, give it a wash.
You're not watching it.
Are you filming that? Don't expose me. So I sprinkle a little bit of flour on the surface, right on the table. I kind of put a little bit on the dough, just to make sure it doesn't stick. You know, you don't want this to stick. I'm not gonna measure this, but like, I mean, it's the size of my hand. So see how big it gets. I don't care that much if it doesn't turn into a perfect circle, you know, because when I'm cutting it like little squares anyways. So that just doesn't matter that much to me. I'm probably gonna get flamed for how this is not turning out like a circle, but again, I don't care. It's just kind of like the same way that I lift weights. I don't mind putting a little bit of momentum in it, and I don't mind if my pizza is not a perfect circle. We're just gonna keep going, keep going. sauce always first, and I kind of just put it on there and just kind of start. But you know what's so unique about the St. Louis pizza? There's like really no crust. You know, you just kind of go to the end, kind of just make sure that it's not gonna fall off, just kind of like that. But this finger looking good, baby. Now this is the part where if you're not trying to use so many calories, you don't have to use so much. Now, when I do the meat, I just kind of do it in just little pieces. Now I'll come in here a little bit with the onions, hit it with some peppers. Wow, look at that! Look at that. Now remember, this is cooked hot but fast. Woo! 500 degrees. 10 minutes. That's all you need. Look at that. That's how you know it's done. Just starting to brown on the top. It can kind of happen a little bit. I like some big pieces. Best part. UFC. Oh, it's so good. You guys have to make this. So awesome. Definitely 10 out of 10. I recommend. But if you guys want to make this at home, definitely drop a comment. Let me know if you did make it. Thanks for watching.